You know, I want you to picture a scenario today, and I'm willing to bet this is going to sound uncomfortably familiar for you.
Oh, I'm sure it will.
Right. So it's like 6:30 in the morning. You are completely submerged in this deep restorative dream.
The really good kind of sleep.
Exactly. Maybe you're flying, or I don't know, you're having a completely normal, pleasant conversation in a coffee shop you've never actually been to in real life.
Right? Classic dream logic.
Yeah. And then suddenly, just out of nowhere, beep, beep, beep. The alarm just completely obliterates the silence in your room.
It's the worst.
Your eyes snap open, your heart is instantly just hammering against your ribs, right? And before your brain can even process like what city you're currently in, your hand is already reaching out into the dark.
Pure muscle memory at that point.
Pure, unfiltered muscle memory. Your fingers find the cold glass of your phone on the nightstand. You swipe, and that OLED screen just blasts your retinas with blue light.
Just a total shock to the system.
And within 30 seconds, you're scrolling. I mean, you are digesting urgent emails from your manager, you're absorbing catastrophic global news headlines, and you're comparing your bleary-eyed Tuesday morning to someone else's heavily filtered vacation photos on Instagram.
Which is just a brutal way to start the day.
It really is. And finally, you drag your feet onto the floor, but there's this heavy, lingering mental fog, like a chaotic, buzzing sluggishness that follows you into the shower, into your commute, and basically just sits on your shoulders for the rest of the day.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, we treat that sequence as just a normal byproduct of modern life. Like, that's just what mornings are.
Right. We just accept it.
But biologically speaking,
Yeah.
it is a trauma. I mean, we
Right.
violently rip our brains out of an unconscious healing state, and before our nervous system even has a fraction of a chance to stabilize, we just flood our prefrontal cortex with the compounded anxieties of the entire world.
You just dump it all in there.
Exactly. And then we sit in traffic and wonder why our attention span is completely fractured by 9 in the morning.
Well, that sequence, and really how to completely dismantle it, is the mission of this deep dive today.
I'm excited for this one.
Me too.
Okay.
Because today, we are unpacking the critical science behind those very first moments of waking up. The research we've pulled is overwhelmingly clear. The first 10 minutes of your morning completely dictate your mood, your attention patterns, and your cognitive focus for the rest of the day.
It really sets the baseline.
It sets everything. So we're going to explore how to transition from that panicked, reactive state into a grounded, proactive state. And we're pulling from an incredible stack of sources today.
We've got a lot of ground to cover.
We really do. We have neurobiological research on electrophysiological brainwave transitions. We've got physiological data on the cortisol awakening response.
Which is fascinating, by the way.
Oh, it blows my mind. We also have analyses of how early dopamine stimulation just totally scrambles our behavioral momentum. And, of course, practical frameworks for actually taking back control of your morning.
Real actionable stuff.
Exactly. Okay, so let's unpack this. And I think we need to start with this pervasive, totally flawed assumption we all seem to have about how human consciousness actually boots up in the morning.
Right, the whole binary myth.
Yeah.
The assumption that waking up is just a light switch.
Yes, the light switch myth.
Most people operate under this belief that wakefulness is binary.
Yeah.
You are either fully asleep or your eyes are open and you are at 100% functional capacity.
Which is such a punishing standard to hold ourselves to, honestly. I want you, the listener, to imagine waking up not as flipping a switch, but as, like, turning a heavy mechanical dial on an old amplifier.
That's a great analogy.
Right. You don't just snap to full volume or 100% capacity the second light hits your eyes. You can't just immediately start solving complex logistical problems or managing heavy emotional workloads at your job.
You really can't. And the electrophysiological data in our sources backs this up completely. The reality is that the transition from deep sleep to alert consciousness takes the brain approximately 25 minutes to fully stabilize.
25 minutes.
Yes, roughly 25 minutes. It is a massive, multi-stage neurobiological undertaking. It's a profound shift in neural oscillation.
So to understand why bypassing that 25-minute sequence causes so many, like, systemic errors in our day, we really have to look at the characteristic brainwaves involved, right?
Exactly. Because across all demographics, the human brain moves through distinct frequencies. Let's start at the bottom. During your most restorative periods of sleep, your brain is dominated by delta waves.
Okay, delta waves. What are those exactly?
Delta waves are incredibly slow, high amplitude waves. They oscillate between roughly 0.5 to 4 hertz. When you're in delta, your physical body is doing the heavy lifting, repairing tissue, consolidating physical energy, but your conscious mind is completely, totally offline.
So delta is like the absolute bottom of the ocean. It's pitch black, it's silent.
Perfect way to describe it.
Okay, so then as the morning approaches and your body begins to prep for the day, we start rising toward the surface. We move into what the researchers call the hypnopompic window.
The hypnopompic window. It sounds like a sci-fi term, but it's very real.
It really does. And this is where the brain shifts into theta waves, right? Operating at about 4 to 8 hertz. The sources actually describe theta as a sleepy idle.
Sleepy idle is a good term for it.
Yeah, it's this deeply relaxed, suggestible state where the brain is kind of unshackled from rigid logical constraints.
Right. The hypnopompic window is where the brain's default mode network is highly active. But your executive control centers the parts of your brain that do the rational filtering. Those are still dormant.
So what does that actually feel like?
Well, you might experience fragmented mental imagery or abstract thoughts just kind of floating in and out. Because your internal filter is lowered, the networks tied to imagination are weaving ideas together without any critical judgment saying, no, that doesn't make sense.
Oh, wow. So you're just kind of freely associating.
Exactly. And historically, some famous figures actually exploited this specific window. Thomas Edison and Salvador Dali are great examples.
Oh, I read about this in the sources. It's wild.
So cool. They would intentionally hold heavy objects, like brass balls or heavy metal keys, in their hands while they were drifting off in a chair.
And then what?
Well, when their muscles finally relaxed as they entered that theta state, that sleepy idle, the object would literally drop out of their hand, hit the floor, and the noise would wake them up just enough.
That's genius.
Right, and then they would immediately write down the abstract, bizarre connections their brains were just making in that theta state. They were actively harvesting that creative sweet spot.
They were hacking their own brain waves. Okay, so following theta, if the waking sequence is allowed to continue naturally, the brain transitions into alpha waves.
Yes, alpha waves, oscillating between 8 to 12 hertz.
And alpha is kind of the crucial gateway here, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It's a state of calm, centered focus. Think about if you've ever finished a really great deep meditation session, or if you've found yourself just peacefully staring out a window feeling completely grounded.
Just totally zoned out, but awake.
Right. Your brain was basically bathing in alpha waves at that moment.
Okay. And only after that alpha bridge is successfully crossed does the brain finally engage in beta activity.
Exactly. Beta is roughly 12 to 30 hertz. This is the high-frequency state required for active logical reasoning.
Like reacting to external stimuli, answering emails, navigating a busy office environment.
All of that requires beta. So the natural sequence must be delta to theta to alpha to beta.
It's a very specific ladder you have to climb.
And what the neurobiological research really emphasizes here is the extreme vulnerability of the border crossing between theta and alpha.
The sources refer to the mind in this specific transitional phase as a pristine sponge, which is such a vivid image.
It's very accurate. In this pristine sponge phase, your executive function, that logical shield that usually filters out stress and prioritizes information, it hasn't booted up yet.
It's still offline.
Right. So your brain is exceptionally impressionable. It is quietly absorbing whatever inputs it encounters to set the baseline stress response for the coming hours.
Okay, so if you wake up slowly, maybe let your eyes adjust to the natural daylight coming through the blinds, stretch your arms a bit. You are basically soaking that pristine sponge in calm, grounding sensory data.
You are solidifying the alpha bridge. You're building a stable foundation.
But if we shatter that delicate transition, say we jolt ourselves awake with an alarm and immediately open an email from an angry client, we are violently shoving the brain into a high beta state.
You're skipping steps. And the brain does not like skipping steps.
It really makes me think of an orchestra tuning up. Like you have all these distinct sections trying to find their pitch, warming up the instruments slowly, and then suddenly the conductor just starts screaming at them to play a frantic, complex symphony at double speed.
And the result is just noise, complete cognitive noise.
Exactly. So what is the actual neurobiological consequence of forcing that acceleration?
Cognitive fragmentation. By skipping the restorative stabilization of the alpha state, your nervous system interprets that sudden demand for high beta processing as an acute survival emergency.
Because it doesn't know you're just reading an email. It thinks you're being attacked.
Right. You lock your brain into a state of hypervigilance.
Yeah.
And that underlying hum of anxiety, that buzzing feeling, it will color literally every interaction you have for the remainder of the day.
Wow. Which, brings us right to the auditory weapon that's responsible for shattering that transition for most of us.
Yeah.
The alarm clock.
Dreaded alarm clock.
Specifically, I want to talk about the physiological devastation caused by sounds like the default smartphone radar tone. Everyone knows it.
Oh, people have visceral reactions just hearing it in public.
Yes. You see those TikTok trends where people play the iPhone radar tone at like 2 p.m. on a Tuesday, and everyone in the room has a full-body Pavlovian panic response?
Because the auditory cortex doesn't ever really sleep. Even when you are unconscious, your auditory cortex is constantly monitoring the environment for sudden changes in decibel levels.
It's the night watchman.
Exactly. So when a jarring synthetic alarm blares in a dark, quiet bedroom, your brain does not logically deduce, oh, it's time to get up for my marketing stand-up meeting.
Right, it doesn't have that context.
Not at all. The amygdala, which is the ancient threat detection center, deep within the temporal lobe, it processes that sudden noise identically to a predator breaking a branch near your cave.
Literally like a bear attack.
It registers an immediate, mortal threat to your survival. So in a fraction of a millisecond, the amygdala overrides any remaining sleep architecture you have.
It just pulls the fire alarm.
It pulls the fire alarm, sends a massive distress signal to the hypothalamus, and instantly activates the sympathetic nervous system.
The body's SOS switch gets flipped. And the physiological fallout from this is insane. There was this University of Virginia study in our sources measuring the cardiovascular impact of this exact mechanism.
That study is really eye-opening.
It's terrifying. They found that participants who were forced awake by a sudden, loud alarm experienced a 74% greater morning blood pressure surge compared to those who woke up naturally.
A 74% spike. Let that sink in.
74%. Your blood vessels are abruptly constricting. Your heart just goes into absolute overdrive. All because your biology is literally preparing your muscles to physically fight for your life or sprint into the woods.
And doing that to your body every single morning. That rapid sympathetic surge is deeply traumatic to the cardiovascular system, especially when you compound it over years and decades.
I can't even imagine the wear and tear on your veins.
It's significant.
Right.
But operating right alongside that cardiovascular shock is a massive disruption to your endocrine system, specifically regarding cortisol.
Okay, let's talk about cortisol, because I think we need to reframe how we view it. Popular wellness culture often just demonizes cortisol as the bad stress hormone. Like, we should want zero cortisol.
Which is completely false. You need cortisol to live. In the context of waking up, cortisol is a vital functional tool. The cortisol awakening response, or the CAN-IR, is actually a brilliantly designed biological mechanism.
The sources describe it as the body's natural internal cup of coffee.
That's a great way to put it. A healthy car involves your cortisol levels rising very steadily and then peaking about 30 to 45 minutes after you wake up.
And it's supposed to increase by what, about 50%?
Ideally, yes. About a 50% increase from the moment your eyes open. That measured, gradual surge raises your blood sugar slightly, it optimizes your blood pressure, and it essentially gives you the cognitive resilience to tackle the day's physical and mental demands.
So it's prepping you for action.
Yes. And the genius of the HPA axis, which is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis that governs this whole release, is this phenomenon called prospective memory.
Prospective memory. I loved this part of the research.
It's so cool. Your brain actually actively anticipates the specific demands of your upcoming day while you are still fast asleep.
Wait, really? While you're asleep, it knows what you have to do today?
Yes. It pre-calculates the necessary cortisol curve based on your circadian rhythm and your internal expectation of stress for the next day.
That is just incredible. The sleep scientists in our sources get into this really fascinating nuance regarding chronotypes and this prospective memory.
The long versus short sleepers.
Yes. When they looked at long sleepers, so individuals who naturally average around 9 hours of sleep a night, they found that their maximum rate of cortisol release actually begins 97 minutes before they even wake up.
Almost 2 hours before their eyes open.
Right. Their bodies are engaging in this incredibly smooth, long anticipatory ramp up. It's like gently turning up the heat. But for short sleepers, people averaging about 6 hours, or people who are chronically sleep-deprived their bodies, simply do not have the time to execute that pre-calculation.
They're shortchanging the system.
Completely. So for them, their maximum cortisol increase happens reactively, approximately 12 minutes after waking.
You're shifting the entire hormonal burden from an anticipatory gentle glide path to a reactive panic dump.
And then you introduce a jarring alarm clock into that already sleep-deprived state.
And you completely short-circuit the HPA axis regulation. Instead of a smooth 50% rise over 3/4 of an hour, your adrenal glands basically panic. They dump a massive, unnatural spike of cortisol into your bloodstream instantly.
So you're just left marinating in acute fight-or-flight chemistry while you're still lying in bed.
Exactly. You're starting your morning with a cortisol hangover.
And the sources outline how chronically forcing this mechanism day after day leads to severe dysregulation.
It does. It breaks the system.
Right. If you develop what they call an exaggerated CAR, where your daily morning spike is just disproportionately high, the data correlates that strongly with clinical depression and chronic hyperarousal.
Because your nervous system is constantly redlining.
Yes. Meaning every day, minor frictions like spilling your coffee on the counter or hitting a red light on your commute, they feel like insurmountable tragedies. Your body treats a spilled coffee like a life or death crisis.
And conversely, years of enduring that level of stress can lead to a blunted CAR, where the adrenal system essentially just burns out. It gives up.
So what happens then?
The morning cortisol rise flattens out to less than 50%.
Mm.
And you wake up feeling this bone-deep, persistent fatigue that literally no amount of caffeine can fix because your endocrine system is depleted.
Man. So we've established a pretty devastating baseline here for the average morning.
We really have.
I mean, within the first 2 minutes of the morning, we have ruptured the delicate theta-alpha brainwave transition. We have inflicted a 74% blood pressure surge on our cardiovascular system, and we've artificially maxed out our cortisol levels.
The physiological house is quite literally on fire.
On fire. And here is where it gets really interesting. And by interesting, I mean behaviorally self-destructive.
Oh, here we go.
Because while we are lying there in this state of artificially induced panic and lingering sleep inertia, what do? We reach for our smartphones.
The worst possible move.
I really view picking up the phone in bed as the ultimate unforced error.
It's self-sabotage.
It is. I mean, imagine opening the front door of your physical house at 6:35 a.m. and just letting 300 shouting people, politicians, your boss, advertisers, angry strangers on social media just stampede right into your bedroom before you have even figured out your own emotional baseline for the day.
You are surrendering that pristine sponge we talked about to the highest bidder.
Yes.
The psychological impact of this reactive behavior is immense. The data indicates that the average person picks up their phone 96 times a day.
96 times.
But that initial morning pickup is the crucial catalyst. It sets the behavioral momentum for the entire waking period. Because what you were doing is colliding the massive cortisol surge from the alarm clock with a massive influx of dopamine from the screen.
And I really want to pause on the dopamine dynamic because it is heavily misunderstood by the general public.
Very misunderstood.
People still talk about dopamine as the happy chemical, right? Like it's the chemical that makes you feel satisfied or joyful.
Right. But the neurobiological sources clarify that dopamine is actually the molecule of craving. It's about motivation and reward anticipation. It's not about the reward itself.
So when you pull down your thumb to refresh your email inbox or you're scanning the screen looking for a little red notification badge, your brain's reward circuitry is releasing dopamine.
Exactly. It is signaling to you, pay attention to this, do this again, a reward might be coming.
It's like pulling the lever on a slot machine.
That is the exact mechanism. It creates an intense urge to seek, not a feeling of satiety. You get the dopamine hit from opening the app, but that spike fades almost instantly. And then your brain demands another hit to maintain that new baseline.
So you just keep swiping.
You keep swiping. But the tragic irony here is the content you are consuming to get that dopamine. The urgent work requests, so polarizing news articles, the social comparisons, that content is simultaneously triggering further cortisol release.
The sources actually use a brilliant metaphor for this vicious cycle. They say the smartphone becomes both the cigarette and the lighter.
Oh, that's incredibly accurate.
Right. The dopamine drives the compulsory habit to keep scrolling, while the stressful content is actively burning out your adrenal system. You are chemically addicting yourself to the very inputs that are causing your anxiety.
And remember, this neurochemical hijacking is occurring while your prefrontal cortex is still severely compromised by sleep inertia.
The prefrontal cortex being the part of the brain that handles what?
It handles executive function, impulse control, and complex decision-making. It's the adult in the room. By engaging with a digital interface the second you wake up, you are forcing this groggy, half-asleep part of the brain to instantly process dense information and execute dozens of micro-decisions.
Like, read this headline, swipe past that ad, archive this email, double tap that photo.
Totally. And every single one of those micro-actions drains a finite cognitive battery. You are inducing severe decision fatigue before your feet have even touched the floor.
You're literally emptying the tank of willpower that you are going to desperately need at 2:00 p.m. to finish a difficult project at work.
You are. And the structural consequences on our daily habits are profound. This early digital overstimulation traps us in what psychologists call a procrastination loop.
How does that work exactly?
Well, by conditioning your brain at dawn to receive high-reward dopamine for zero physical or cognitive effort, requiring literally nothing more than the movement of a thumb, you alter your motivational baseline for the rest of the day. Your brain learns to expect effortless stimulation.
Oh, man. So when you sit down at your desk a few hours later and try to tackle, say, a complex spreadsheet or write a difficult proposal, the brain just rebels.
It completely rejects it.
Yeah.
The effort-to-reward ratio of deep, meaningful work simply cannot compete with the algorithmic delivery system of a smartphone.
It's too much work for too little immediate dopamine.
Exactly. We scramble our own attention patterns, leading to a day defined by task switching, constant distraction, and seeking quick fixes. Over time, the sources even point to studies showing chronic digital overstimulation actually correlates with a decrease in gray matter density in the brain regions responsible for sustained attention.
Wait, it physically changes the brain?
Yes, we are engineering our own cognitive decline before breakfast.
That is terrifying. Okay, so if we recognize that auditory alarms and immediate digital consumption are hostile to our biology, we have to look at the interventions.
We need solutions.
We have to reverse engineer the environment to support the human organism. So let's dive into the practical strategies. And I want to start with a topic that is highly controversial in sleep hygiene circles.
I think I know where you're going with this.
I'm going to push back on a piece of accepted wellness wisdom here. For years, every sleep article and productivity podcast has declared the snooze button to be the ultimate villain of the morning, like the absolute worst thing you can possibly do.
Right. It's universally demonized.
But the latest data is telling a very different story, isn't it?
It is. The traditional consensus heavily penalized the snooze button due to the mechanics of sleep fragmentation.
Because of REM sleep?
Exactly. The final hours of our sleep architecture are densely packed with REM rapid eye movement sleep, which is non-negotiable for memory consolidation and emotional regulation.
It's crucial.
Very. So the prevailing theory was always that hitting snooze and drifting off for 9 minutes, then waking up, then sleeping for 9 minutes, it repeatedly fractured that REM cycle.
Right. The thought was you aren't getting deep sleep in those tiny 9-minute increments.
Exactly. The idea was you're just confusing your circadian rhythm and repeatedly triggering that cardiovascular shock of the alarm, thereby making sleep inertia much, much worse.
Hold on, though. If that is the biological mechanism repeatedly shocking the heart and fracturing REM, how can the new research possibly defend it? Why would repeatedly shocking the system ever be beneficial?
It's a great question. The nuance emerged in recent studies published in the Journal of Sleep Research in 2023 and 2024. Researchers isolated a specific demographic. They looked at habitual snoozers.
Meaning people who hit snooze every single day.
Right. Individuals whose bodies were entirely accustomed to the practice. They subjected these habitual snoozers to cognitive tests immediately after waking up, focusing on memory recall and basic arithmetic.
Arithmetic tests right after waking up.
Brutal.
Very brutal. But counterintuitively, the habitual snoozers who were allowed a 30-minute snooze period performed significantly better on those cognitive tasks than individuals who were forced out of bed after a single abrupt alarm.
Wait, they perform better on arithmetic immediately after waking.
Yes.
What is the biological mechanism driving that improvement? That seems totally backwards.
The working hypothesis centers on the mitigation of the acute stress response. For people who are heavily conditioned to the snooze cycle, the initial alarm does not trigger that massive singular cortisol dump we talked about earlier.
Oh, because the brain knows it's not the real wake-up time yet.
Exactly. Instead, the repeated, predictable auditory cues act as a gradual stepping down process. It eases the sympathetic nervous system into wakefulness.
It's a buffer. Right. Rather than a vertical cliff of cortisol and adrenaline, the snooze button creates a gentle staircase. It prevents the severe grogginess and panic associated with a single jarring wake-up.
So they are effectively using the snooze button to manually mimic a slower brainwave transition. They're preventing the HPA axis from completely redlining.
That's exactly the case. However, the researchers are very careful to add a major caveat here.
Which is?
While a 20 to 30-minute snooze routine can soften the blow of waking up, Heavy reliance on snoozing very often masks chronic sleep deprivation or undiagnosed issues like sleep apnea.
Ah, so it's a symptom of a larger problem.
It's a coping mechanism, albeit a cognitively effective one for those who are habituated to it, but still a coping mechanism.
Okay, so if the snooze better is just a coping mechanism for a flawed auditory alarm system, we really need to look at the actual gold standard for waking up.
We do. We need to ditch sound entirely.
Yes, we need to use light, the science of dawn simulation.
Dawn simulation. Utilizing sunrise alarm clocks represents a fundamental realignment with human evolutionary biology. It leverages the SCN, the suprachiasmatic nucleus.
The suprachiasmatic nucleus, what is that exactly?
It's a tiny region in the hypothalamus that functions as the brain's master clock. The SCN calibrates our entire circadian rhythm, and its primary environmental input, its main source of data, is light.
But the obvious question people always have about this is, if my eyes are closed and I am fast asleep, how is a glowing light on my nightstand communicating with my hypothalamus?
It's a fair question. The human eye actually contains specialized cells called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, or IPRGCs for short.
IPRGCs.
Right. These cells are distinct from the rods and cones that we use for normal visual image processing. You don't see with them in the traditional sense.
Okay, so what do?
They are exceptionally sensitive to ambient light. They can detect gradually increasing lux levels right through your closed eyelids. Well, think about it. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors experienced the slow, gradual brightening of dawn through their eyelids, which sent a steady, reliable signal to the brain to initiate the waking sequence.
So a sunrise alarm is just mimicking that exact evolutionary trigger in a modern bedroom.
Exactly. The light gradually increases over 30 to 45 minutes before you actually need to be awake. And the biological cascade this creates is just incredible.
Walk me through that cascade. What's happening in the body?
As the lux levels rise in the room, the light signal hitting those IPRGCs actively suppresses the production of melatonin.
Which is the hormone keeping you asleep.
Right. And simultaneously, it begins to slowly, gently elevate your cortisol levels while you are still unconscious.
Oh, so you are artificially recreating that anticipatory cortisol ramp-up that long sleepers enjoy naturally.
You're hacking the perspective memory of the HPA axis. Instead of waking up at the bottom of the cortisol curve and requiring a massive reactive spike, dawn simulation phase shifts the curve. By the time your eyes actually open, your endocrine system has already prepared your body for consciousness.
Has already done the work.
Yes. And the clinical data supporting this is extremely robust.
Yeah, there is a pivotal 2010 study in our sources that measures the sheer power of the subtle light. And I found this fascinating. The researchers wanted to see how effectively light could phase shift the circadian rhythm.
It's a great study.
They took two groups of people. One group received 93 minutes of gradual dawn simulation that peaked at a very dim 250 lux.
250 lux is not very bright at all. Think of like a dim bedside lamp.
Exactly. The second group was exposed to 30 minutes of intense 10,000 lux bright light therapy after they had already woken up.
And to contextualize that for the listener, 10,000 lux is the standard, blindingly bright treatment protocol for seasonal affective disorder. It is an immense amount of photonic energy.
It's like staring into the sun. Yet the researchers discovered that the gentle dawn simulation, peaking at a mere 250 lux through closed eyelids, was equally effective at phase shifting the circadian rhythm as the 10,000 lux blast.
Which is astounding. It proves that the brain's sensitivity to light in the 2 hours immediately preceding natural awakening is profound.
And the gradual light also triggers the early synthesis of serotonin, right?
Yeah, serotonin, the neurotransmitter crucial for mood regulation. The sources highlight multiple placebo-controlled trials demonstrating that slow dawn simulations drastically reduce Hamilton depression scores.
Especially for people suffering from winter depression or seasonal affective disorder.
Right, because you bypass the sluggish, half-asleep state, you protect that fragile theta-alpha transition, and you wake up physiologically balanced.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, optimizing the environmental cue really changes everything. By simply swapping a jarring noise for a gradual light, we transition the human organism from a state of physiological panic to a state of natural hormonal equilibrium before conscious thought even begins.
You fix the hardware before you even boot up the software.
Exactly. Okay, so we have fixed the biology of the wake-up, the cardiovascular system is calm, the cortisol is optimized. Now the listener's eyes are open and we have to address the behavioral strategy.
What do we actually do with those first few minutes?
Right. How do we actively spend the first moments of consciousness? And before we get into the framework, I really want to take a moment to critique the absolute absurdity of the guru morning routines that just completely dominate productivity blogs right now.
Oh, the hyper-optimized billionaire morning rituals.
Yes. The article's telling you that to be a successful, functional human being, you must wake up at 3:30 a.m., sit in a 90-minute hyperbaric ice bath, meditate in absolute silence for an hour, drink matcha tea harvested by specific monks, and write 15 pages of profound gratitude journaling.
It's completely exhausting.
It's an exhausting, completely unrealistic standard for anyone juggling, a normal job, a commute, or children. It weaponizes the morning. It turns it into this high-stakes test where if you miss one single step, you feel like a failure by 8 drone a.m.
And stress is exactly what we're trying to avoid.
Exactly. So the productivity frameworks we analyzed in our sources offer a profound relief from this. You do not need a 2-hour routine. You only need to ruthlessly protect the first 10 minutes.
Shrinking the window to 10 minutes is a brilliant psychological intervention
Why is that?
because it shifts the goal from completing a massive, intimidating checklist to simply establishing a foundation of control. The sole objective of those first 10 minutes is to transition from a reactive state where the environment dictates your behavior to a proactive state.
Where you are in charge.
Right. It eliminates early decision fatigue and sends a powerful sensory signal to your nervous system that you are safe, you are intentional, and you are steering the ship.
So the sources break this down into a highly actionable 10-minute framework. Let's walk through it chronologically for the listener.
Let's do it.
Minutes 0 to 2 are dedicated entirely to protecting your inputs. This is the implementation of the phone-free buffer zone.
The absolute priority here is defending the pristine sponge. You must resist the dopamine swap.
Right, no phones.
And the environmental design here is crucial. Relying on willpower alone when you are half asleep is a failing strategy. You will lose that battle.
Because your prefrontal cortex is still groggy.
Exactly. So the sources recommend keeping the physical device charging in another room entirely, or at the very least placing it on airplane mode the night before.
Just create a physical barrier?
Yes. This physical barrier ensures that your first cognitive actions of the day are self-directed, not algorithmically dictated by an app. You have to establish your own emotional baseline before you allow the world's agenda to penetrate your consciousness.
Okay, so the inputs are secured. No phone for the first 2 minutes. Moving into minutes 2 to 5, the focus shifts to hydration and grounding.
Hydration is just pure biological maintenance.
Right. I mean, you have just spent 7 to 9 hours continuously exhaling water vapor and sweating without any fluid intake. You wake up in a state of mild dehydration.
Which is a primary driver of morning brain fog and lethargy. People think they need coffee, but their cells literally just need water.
Exactly. Downing 8 to 16 ounces of water immediately rehydrates the cellular system, it increases your blood volume, and it jumpstarts your metabolic rate. It is a biological win requiring zero cognitive effort.
And accompanying that hydration is the grounding actions.
Grounding.
Grounding is about forcing the brain out of its default mode network and into present moment sensory awareness. It intercepts that natural tendency to start catastrophizing about the day ahead.
One of the productivity writers in the research tested a specific grounding routine recommended by a neurologist, and I have to share this because it is wonderfully bizarre.
Oh, the mirror thing.
Yes. The neurologist instructed them to get out of bed, walk to the bathroom mirror, look themselves directly in the eye, loudly declare that it is going to be an excellent day, and then immediately brush their teeth using their non-dominant hand.
It sounds like a complete parlor trick.
It really does. But the neurobiology behind it is fascinating.
It is. Using the non-dominant hand is the key mechanism there.
Right. If you are right-handed and you try to brush your teeth with your left hand, it feels incredibly awkward.
You look ridiculous doing it.
You do. And it requires active neuroplasticity. You have to concentrate so intensely on the motor control just to avoid stabbing yourself in the gums that your prefrontal cortex is forced to fully engage with the present moment.
You literally cannot simultaneously worry about a looming work deadline while orchestrating that unfamiliar physical movement. It manually overrides the autopilot.
It's a forced mindfulness exercise.
Exactly. And whether you use the non-dominant hand technique, or you splash freezing cold water on your face, or you just stand barefoot on the floorboards focusing on the temperature, the mechanism is exactly the same.
You are flooding the brain with novel sensory signals.
Yes. You anchor your consciousness in the immediate physical environment. You are proving to your nervous system, through physical evidence, that the current moment is safe.
Okay, so we are hydrated, our teeth are brushed, awkwardly, and we are fully present. That brings us to minutes 5 to 8, which are allocated for movement.
And we should clarify, we are not talking about a grueling CrossFit session or a 5-mile run here.
No, please no. The research specifies just 60 seconds of light physical activity, like a series of deep squats, a quick yoga flow, or even just briskly walking up and down the stairs in your house.
Just 60 seconds of muscular contraction acts as a potent physiological cue. It signals the circadian system that the rest phase has definitively ended.
Wake up time is over.
Right. That brief spike in heart rate increases cerebral blood flow, oxygenating the brain tissue. But more importantly, skeletal muscle activation triggers the release of key neurotransmitters.
Specifically dopamine and norepinephrine.
Yes, but organically. You are generating your own internal motivation and focus without relying on the artificial dopamine hit of a screen or the severe adrenal crash of a double espresso.
You're brewing your own neurochemicals. I love that. Which perfectly sets the stage for the final 2 minutes of our framework, minutes 8 to 10. And this is where we have to confront the most insidious morning hurdle, the inner critic.
The inner critic. It ruins so many mornings.
The psychological literature notes that the fragile transitional period of the morning is prime territory for negative self-talk.
It is. As the executive function finally comes online, the brain naturally begins scanning the horizon for potential threats. It's a survival mechanism. But for modern humans, many individuals fall into immediate catastrophizing.
Magnifying minor problems.
Magnifying problems,
Yeah.
anticipating failure,
Yeah.
fixating on how exhausted they already feel. And this internal narrative acts as a psychological stressor, which drives cortisol levels back up and compounds the friction of the morning.
You wake up and your first thought is, I am going to completely bomb that presentation today. The commute is going to be miserable. I cannot handle this schedule.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So to master that inner critic, the psychological tool recommended across the research is something called distanced self-talk.
Distanced self-talk is a profound cognitive reappraisal technique.
How does it work?
It involves a very simple linguistic shift. Instead of using first-person pronouns like I or me when thinking about the day's challenges, you refer to yourself in the third person. Or you use your own first name.
So instead of thinking I am overwhelmed by the schedule, you would mentally say something like, okay, you have a massive amount of work on your plate today, but you have prepared for this and you can handle it step by step.
Exactly.
But how does merely changing the pronoun alter the psychological impact? It sounds too simple.
It does sound simple, but functional MRI studies on distant self-talk reveal that this linguistic shift actually changes how the brain processes emotion.
Really? Just changing I to you?
Yes. By using your own name or a third-person pronoun, you create an emotional buffer. You step outside of your immersed, egocentric viewpoint, and you observe yourself from a distance.
You become a spectator to your own stress.
Right. The brain shifts the processing load away from the amygdala, the emotional panic center, and recruits the cognitive control regions of the prefrontal cortex.
Oh, wow.
You end up evaluating your own stress with the same objectivity, rationality, and compassion that you would naturally offer to a close friend facing the exact same problem.
Because we're always nicer to our friends than we are to ourselves?
Always. It drastically reduces performance anxiety and stabilizes your emotional regulation. You become your own coach rather than your own critic.
That is incredibly powerful. So what does this all mean for the listener? If we zoom out and look at the complete 10-minute framework, protecting the inputs by hiding the phone, rehydrating the system, grounding the mind with novel sensory tasks like the left-handed brushing, moving the body for 60 seconds to release organic dopamine, and using distant self-talk to neutralize anxiety.
That's a very comprehensive sequence.
But these are all remarkably small, low-effort actions. None of them require a biohacking chamber, but their cumulative effect is monumental.
Because you are broadcasting a powerful, unified signal to your biology. You are proving to your brain that you are safe, that you possess agency, and that you are dictating the terms of engagement for the day.
You have systematically eliminated the friction points. You protected the vulnerable theta-alpha transition. You managed the cortisol awakening response, and you circumvented the early decision fatigue caused by digital overload.
You've taken the most neurologically volatile 10 minutes of your day and transformed them into an unshakable foundation of psychological resilience.
It's a radical reclaiming of our own biology. Let's recap the terrain we've covered today because it's been a lot.
It has been a deep dive for sure.
We journeyed from the deepest trenches of delta sleep up through the hypnotic, pristine sponge of the theta and alpha brainwaves. We analyzed the sheer cardiovascular trauma inflicted by synthetic alarm tones,
The 74% spike.
the 74% spike, and how that sudden auditory shock replaces a smooth, anticipatory cortisol ramp-up with a violent, reactive adrenal dump.
We dissected the phone trap, examining how the lethal combination of dopamine-driven behavioral conditioning and cortisol-spiking digital content scrambles our attention
And
patterns.
it induces decision fatigue before we even leave the bedroom.
It's exactly setting a trajectory of procrastination.
We also looked at the surprising, counterintuitive cognitive benefits of the snooze button for habitual users.
The arithmetic test shocker.
Still can't believe that one. And we explored the evolutionary brilliance of dawn simulation, how light penetrating the eyelids suppresses melatonin and phase shifts the circadian rhythm to guarantee a gentle wake-up.
Which is such a simple, elegant solution.
It really is. And finally, we dismantled the toxic culture of the 90-minute guru routine, replacing it with the science-backed, highly achievable 10-minute framework.
The central thesis here is empowerment through biological alignment. You are not obligated to be a victim of your mornings.
No, you're not.
By shifting from a posture of reactive defense to one of deliberate, calculated intentionality, you seize control over the cognitive momentum of your entire day.
So here's the call to action for you, the listener. We are not asking for a complete lifestyle overhaul by tomorrow morning.
Please don't try to change everything at once.
Right. It never works. We are asking you to experiment with just one microscopic change. Tonight, plug your phone in across the room out of arm's reach. Or dig into your alarm settings and swap the panic-inducing radar tone for a gentle, escalating chime.
Or just commit to drinking a tall glass of water and taking 60 seconds to stretch your legs before you allow yourself to look at a single screen.
Choose one variable and completely own those first 10 minutes.
Because the compounding behavioral momentum of that single intentional act will profoundly alter the trajectory of your day.
It truly will. But before we sign off, I want to leave you with a macro-level thought to mull over.
I like this one.
We have spent this entire deep dive hyper-focused on the individual, right? How your personal waking sequence dictates your isolated mood, your specific productivity, and your individual emotional regulation.
The microbiology of the morning routine.
Exactly that. But I want you to scale this up. We live in an interconnected global society. Every single morning, billions of human beings are waking up simultaneously. And based on the data, the vast majority of those billions are being violently jolted out of their REM cycles by synthetic, panic-inducing alarms. They are instantly flooding their pristine, impressionable brains with the localized anxiety of their algorithms, and they are artificially maxing out their cortisol levels before the sun has even reached the horizon.
It's a staggering thought when you zoom out.
Right. If our individual mornings are the absolute bedrock of our emotional stability and cognitive focus, what are the macro-level implications for a world that collectively starts every single day in a state of acute fight or flight?
It's intense.
Are we, as a global society, permanently reacting to a bear attack that isn't actually happening?
It forces us to question the nature of our collective anxiety. If the entire population is waking up neurologically defensive, it fundamentally degrades the empathy, patience, and rationality of every single human interaction that follows.
It colors the entire world, the traffic jams, the meetings, the social media discourse, everything.
It really does.
So tomorrow morning, when it is time to wake up, remember the dial. Do not flip the switch. Protect your pristine sponge, secure your inputs, and own your 10 minutes.